So, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, with that, we have concluded the formal opening of the National Coalition Center. So, thank you all and have a pleasant evening. And see you tomorrow.
Here, the formal opening of the Coalition Center right there in Abuja. Listening to the INEC chairman there reel out the process for that to happen. He had talked about the fact that it will be more of a 13-step process from what we could gather from the INEC chairman. He talked about how all the accredited polling agents, the observers, the media will be expected to be in their positions that are assigned to them, and hoping that they stay in those positions for the duration of the process. He also talked about the fact that announcements for each state will be presented by the coalition officer, and went into the process of how that will be done. 13 steps that we hear there. Also to remember that INEC will be the ones to announce the results. So whatever you see or hear on social media, you should take with a pinch of salt, as the official results are not yet out.
Indeed. And as another important point made there was that the Coalition Center will remain open until the final result of the presidential election is announced, but there will be adjournments, and the very first adjournment has taken place.
They will be reconvening tomorrow at 11 a.m.
in the morning.
And he had said that there could be interludes and adjournments, but that these will be announced as at when they happen. Yeah.
All right, we'll take a break, and when we come back, we'll expand the scope of the discussion to include Norua, who's since been joined by Obina Igbonu, and of course, we'll also include Jide, who will conclude who's been itching to conclude his data analysis. We'll do that too, but that'll be after the break. Please stay with us.
Welcome back to the program. It's The Verdict on Channels Television. We're keeping you updated minute by minute with all the activities leading up to collation and, of course, the announcement of results. As you can see on the screen there, people are already responding to our request to tell us how you're watching Channels Television, the news leader, where you're watching us, and how. We've seen responses from Ondo State, the United States of America, Finland, Canada, Japan, Indiana, Reading in the UK. So thanks, keep them coming, and continue to keep us updated with where you're watching and how far our reach is going.
You know, I said earlier about watching on a mobile device. Someone in the US is actually watching on his iPad. So I probably got someone to take a picture with.
Yeah, as you advise.
Yeah,
as you actually advise.
With another device and send. So we'll have pictures from Finland, Toronto, Canada, India, Japan, Indiana, Reading in the United Kingdom, and some other parts of the United Kingdom as well. So, as we said, if you have the app or you're watching via the YouTube channel, youtube.com/channels television, subscribe. That makes it easier for you to follow the conversation as well.
And also remember that we're available online, like he said, on terrestrial TV, digital TV, on satellite, and of course all the social media platforms that Nyota has reeled out.
Before we went on the first break, which brought in the INEC chairman, and then we had to go on the second break. Jide, before I lose track now, I think you should conclude.
Oh, certainly. But remember this, finally, as we conclude. What do these elections mean to Nigerians? And they mean three things. Three things. The first is, even though we're focusing on the elections, the first thing it means is it's really a test of popularity.
And then it was just at the local government level that the army intercepted. So we look forward, as long as there are...
Let's go back to what happened in 2003. The then candidate, Muhammadu Buhari, scored 12.7 million votes in the election. But out of the 12.7 million votes, 12.3 million votes came from the north. In other words, 97% of his votes came from the north in 2003. Fast track to 2011, candidate Muhammadu Buhari scored 12.2 million votes. Again, 11.8 million out of his 12.2 million votes came from the northern region. In other words, 97% of his votes came from the 19 states in the north. What happened 4 years ago, 2015? candidate Muhammadu Buhari scored 15.4 million votes. 80% of those votes again came from the north. This time around, we are looking at the major opposition party coming from the north, coming from the same religion, coming from the same tribe. So the first thing this election really means is a test of popularity in the north. The second thing this election means is because it's a test of popularity in the north, it has now made it a test of acceptance in the south. And that is why we see a lot of agitation in the south. Again, because it's a test of popularity in the north, it has opened up the south to become a test of acceptance in the south. And finally, because it's a test of popularity in the north, a test of acceptance in the south, it has made the voters more powerful. And so we've got 72.7 million voters with permanent voter cards. Here's what INEC tells us. 78% of those that have PVCs today, in other words, 8 out of 10 people that you see carrying their PVCs had their PVCs in 2015. Finally, in 2015, the voter was king. In 2019, the voter now is dictator. Whoever the voter wants, the voter will dictate. And that's what's going to make this results quite interesting, and especially the results of the governorship election.
Indeed, Jide, many thanks for that analysis. I'm sure a lot of people already putting together the permutations based on what you say and already reaching some conclusions. But as you said, we're going to wait. Babajide Ogunsawo is Channels Television's data consultant for these elections. And indeed, all through this period and beyond, way beyond, Jide, our thanks as always. Now, returning to the discussion and the INEC chairman. The INEC chairman, of course, has opened formally the Collation Center. Let me start with you, Obinna, since you just joined us now. He listed 13 steps as to how this process will go. Yeah. Again, I will ask, does this engender the confidence that the process is such that whatever result comes up at the end will be seen as acceptable?
Well, thank you for having me here. I think if you look at it from the face value, yeah, it engenders confidence. But from what we have seen over the years, I think this looks like an improvement over what we've had in the past. We were told what is going to happen ahead of time. So let's not begin to doubt the umpire before we see the outcome. So let's follow through with what he has said. And I want to believe that Professor Mahmoud Yakub is sincere. So let's give them a chance to prove us right.
So you think what impresses you is the communication that is going ahead. But there's some who are saying, yes, we're getting briefings, but the downsides that we hear over and over the years, we're still hearing that in spite of the communication. Well, how do you see it?
Okay, go on. Yeah, I was thinking about the entire process all through today, and I was asking myself, we ought to have done electoral, what you call profiling. We've profiled our elections over the years, and what has been the departure. Yeah, we hear there's going to be credibility, we're going to have free and fair elections, and then everyone gets so much excited about it, and at the end of the day, it falls short of expectation. I just wish and believe that they're going to put their money where their mouth is in this particular election. Let's not doubt. Let's give them an opportunity to prove us either right or wrong. That's my own submission on this matter.
Noro, do you agree with that?
For me, I think that after the postponement, INEC seems to have recovered themselves to a very large extent. And sincerely, the ball left INEC and it came back to the politicians, the security forces, and the Nigerians. And so even the 13 steps are the things that are going to happen in that auditorium. Yeah? Now, the lead up to that auditorium is where you need to be asking yourself questions. And so for me, I have I've left INEC in a manner of speaking, and I'm saying, how are the politicians behaving? How are the security forces behaving? Two things that come out for me, glaringly, is that we have serious infrastructure problems. It's not INEC's fault that a polling, post opened at 10 a.m. They had probably paid the guys who were supposed to move that stuff, but so they failed because there is no infrastructure to make that happen. That's one. Secondly, we have such a high trust deficit in our country that everything says to you, shine your eye. Shine your eye, man. You don't know what's going to happen. There's that thing about the other guys try to con the other guys, like, somebody would still try to game the system till zero, you start counting 1, 2, 3. The last step before you get into that hole, somebody is still going to try to game the system if they can. And that's where the problem is. So really for me, INEC has done all that is humanly possible. So from this point on, we really shouldn't be too hard on INEC anymore. They've done their bit. Now, beyond INEC, how are the politicians behaving? Beyond INEC, how's the military, the police, the DSS, and the other components of security, how are they behaving? Beyond INEC, how are we behaving as Nigerians? You know what I mean? We've seen pictures of people, thumbprinting in some bush places and the other place. Why would you want to do that? How much have they given you that you are willing to mortgage everything that you represent? So for me, it's gone beyond INEC. It's now a Nigerian thing. So we must take ownership of whatever we get at the end of the day.
But taking that ownership is something that a lot of people will argue about. They will tell you that they've taken ownership, that's why they're willing to risk their lives. They are willing to risk whatever it is to cast their vote. And the politician will tell you that they're taking ownership, that's why they're willing to risk practically all that many of them, their life savings to contest for one position because they want to make a difference. They've taken ownership.
Not so.
So what's the difference between the ownership they've taken and the ownership you're talking?
When you take ownership as a Nigerian, which is what we have done by going out to vote. The woman that went with her mat and her pillow, you know what I mean, saying no matter what happens, we're going to vote. That's taking ownership. But when you instigate crisis so that voting is not done properly, and you are doing that because you've invested all the money you have, that's not taking ownership. That's gaming the system. All right? So there's a difference. So when you and I go out of our way, to make sure that we vote in spite of all, that's us taking ownership. When INEC has done what they're doing, that's INEC taking ownership. But when a security man goes against, the rules of the game and consciously undermines the system, he's not taking ownership, he's undermining the system.
Again, the question of ownership, we had a guest here yesterday, former Azogo, who said, in her words, INEC has not taken effective ownership of the process because we find the same hiccups, the same hitches that were in the last 4 years repeating themselves. And when you were here yesterday, you talked about strategy. Yeah. That it looks as if the strategy that was used in the previous election is again being used here, and it's still producing a different result is being expected. So, Norway, you talk about, let's get you to talk about the ownership, then he comes in to talk about the strategy here.
I agree with you that we can improve, but in fairness to INEC, INEC doesn't have the means by themselves to move, the 1,000, God knows how many, so they're going to have to use what? Infrastructure. INEC doesn't own NYSC, INEC doesn't own the police, INEC doesn't own the Road Transport Workers Association, so there's so much they can do, in fairness, all right? They goofed initially because they were, trying to do things, give us the wrong impression. And they kind of recovered quickly, and they said, okay, guys, this is it. Last time I was here, I said to them, I said, you guys are now orphans. So you can now go ahead and do this for Nigeria. And I think they tried to do that. So in fairness, of course, if a rec, whatever they call him, decides to connive with a politician in some remote part of Nigeria, you're not going to blame Professor Mahmood in Abuja
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But one of the issues we were looking at was the guidelines. Before the guidelines came out, some of the political parties were so upset, particularly because of those provisions to do with the smart card reader and what happens when it's, malfunctions. And today we're hearing, even in all the briefings, the PVCs were read, but perhaps the person's name was not on the register, so they couldn't vote. But these are things that the political parties and every other analyst we brought here were talking about, that this could be a problem, it could delay voting. It did. So when you say, perhaps there shouldn't be blame, when you look at the background.
You see, it's like this. Take, for example, INEC wasn't sure. Now, don't get me wrong here. I'm not an INEC person. I just feel that, we should try to balance this conversation sometimes, all right? Now, INEC wasn't sure which law was going to govern these elections until the 99th hour. Remember that. Imagine if the electoral law had been signed. Now, I imagine that there are things they could have done differently, which they had to now backtrack and fall back on the old system that we all know is not working. They are restricted or constrained by the laws, okay? So even in that, can they do better? Yes. There's something about us Nigerians that it takes forever for us to it's like to shift, because we seem to have, it's almost